In this video, we're going to give you 9 tips on what to prepare for a winter storm, particularly a storm where you are not expecting one. What types of things to do to keep your pipes from freezing, to stay warm, and to stay safe.
So unless you've been living under a rock, you've heard on the news about the really bad winter storm that Texas recently had. And we were lucky enough to be here in Texas for the storm. So we learned some valuable lessons during this storm, things that we had not thought about, we hadn't prepared for. This is all in hindsight because while the storm didn't catch us off guard, everything that happened during the storm and after the storm really caught us off guard. So in this video, we want to share 9 tips that we learned so that if you ever get caught in a storm, especially in a place where they don't have storms, like Texas. We're from Michigan, and if it's predicted for a winter storm, no big deal. That's like Tuesday in Michigan. But Texas was not prepared for this storm, and neither were we.
Tip number 1. If a storm is predicted in the area that you are in and you have the time to prepare, do so. Now, again, we were in Texas, and who would have expected a winter storm in Texas?
Right, and we had a lot of time. They were predicting this storm for at least a week or two. Yeah. And we just thought, it's not going to be a big deal, and we just never thought that we needed to prepare. So
make the necessary preparations, and we're going to go through some of those tips to help you prepare.
So tip number 2, one of the things that we didn't do ahead of time was to get groceries. We didn't think that we would need to stock up ahead of time, and what we really didn't predict was panic buying that happened after the storm. But we'll touch on that in a minute. But if you know that there's a storm coming and you could potentially lose your power, a good idea is to stock up your pantry with things like nuts, granola, non-perishable things. Also things that don't necessarily need to be cooked on the stovetop, because if you lose power, if you're lucky and you've got propane, but you could lose that too. So just have your pantry with some extra items in it in case you can't get out. A lot of people up in Houston, Dallas area, they couldn't get out because the roads were too bad. We didn't have bad roads down here.
Right.
And we could have even gone out during the storm and gotten supplies. But we just ate through our food and I went grocery shopping on my regular day, and I'll tell you in a few minutes what happened.
Tip number 3, have water on hand. We probably should have had a couple of 5-gallon containers ready for drinking and also ready for flushing the toilets. Now again, luckily we did not run out of electricity, so we didn't really need to worry about the toilet issue or our running water. But certainly if you were paying attention to what was going on in Texas, there was a big shortage of water.
Yeah, and that's just a no-brainer. It's so easy to do, even if you dump it out afterwards.
Right.
Just have some jugs. And actually, we only had one jug, and it turned out it had a hole in it. So I'm putting on my list to go get some jugs to have for storms. Yep. Simple. Tip number 4 is we should have filled up our truck. We should have filled our truck with diesel, and we should have also filled our propane tanks ahead of time. We didn't do any of that. And the lines for the gas stations were out of control in this area, and so propane was just almost impossible to get.
Yeah, we had a propane company coming through the campgrounds, so I made the assumption that they were going to be coming back through. But they were so busy, their trucks really weren't able to even get on the road. They had to have all their people right there at the filling station to service the people that were coming in.
If you know the storm is coming, just go fill up your stuff. Mm-hmm. And we could have easily picked up an extra canister of propane as well, because then we could have cooked, right. If we ran out of cooking propane on our grill outside, we would have had extra.
Tip number 5, when it is predicted to freeze, unhook your water, unhook your sewer, and unhook your water softener. This is the 3rd time that I failed to do all of those. Again, we're in Texas, so I didn't expect really Texas to freeze. But unhook things at the source. So not only just from the rig itself, go to the source. Go to your hookup for water, unscrew that, up your hoses, put them in the rig. Again, we have a heated basement, so we would have prevented a lot of things from freezing. I actually did unhook from the rig. I did not unhook from the source. So in the morning when I went to get the water turned on, it was frozen. So it's just, again, one of those things to kind of think about when you're thinking about all the things that could happen. Make sure that you unhook and drain.
Yeah. And a neighbor of ours also said that some campgrounds will actually charge you if you do not unhook from the source and that pipe cracks. They will charge you to get that pipe repaired. So just unhook everything. Oh, and the one thing you do have to fill up your fresh water tank in your rig, otherwise you'll have no water.
So one of the things we're going to do is fill up the holding tank. We've got plenty of water through the morning, and tomorrow hopefully it warms up and we can put this thing back on for good for a while.
But we learned that the very first time we went camping in cold weather. We didn't fill up our water tank and everything froze. Right. So that was our first lesson. So we did know that, but we now know exactly what to do if it's predicted to freeze.
Right. So tip number 6, I mentioned this briefly, but if you have a water softener, unhook it and get it inside your rig, particularly if it's a heated basement. If they will definitely crack. They're very fragile. We actually called the manufacturer and just said, hey, this is kind of what's happening. Do you think so? And he said, absolutely. No question. So just take a few minutes to make sure that your water softener is unhooked and stored.
And if you don't have a heated basement, bring it inside. Or your hoses inside. We have a heated basement. A lot of rigs do not have heated basements. So anything that's in there is going to be the same temperature as outside. Tip number 7, if you have tank heaters, turn them on. We definitely did do that, and we kept our pipes from freezing by keeping our tanks warm.
Tip number 8, if you have space heaters and a fireplace, use them. The idea being is that you're not going to drain as much from your propane by trying to keep the rig warm. We do have a heat pump, and the heat pump is not good unless it's above 40 degrees. So we had our space heater on, we had our fireplace on, and again, during the day, if it got above 40, we put our heat pump on just so we weren't pulling on the propane during that time as well.
Yes, we really only had to run our propane at night, our furnace.
Yeah, when it got really cold.
Tip number 9, keep your devices charged. Charge them up beforehand. As long as you have power, keep them charged and don't use them up. Don't use up your power. We don't have a portable power station, but I think it might be on the list after this one. Yeah. He wouldn't have been able to work for like 5 days if we had lost power. So those portable power stations, there's all kinds of them on Amazon and everywhere else. Yep. And I think that we're going to look into getting one for ourselves.
Definitely. A couple of final thoughts. If you have camping buddies or friends in the area during these types of storms, definitely stay in touch. We had a couple that we made friends with, and we were definitely in touch with them, and I'll let Chris tell a little bit more about them.
They were camping about 200 miles north of us, and we were kept in touch. Do you have power? And they lost power when everybody else did. And it was 3 days that they were out of power, and then their campground closed, the dump station as well. So they just didn't know what to do, and we said, hey, the campground that we're in, that they were just down the road from us a few days earlier, we have power, so come on down. And they did. They packed up that day and they came on down. Mm-hmm. So, and they spent, I think, 5 more days here. Sometimes you have to change your schedule. And a lot of people ask us, well, why didn't you just move? Why didn't you leave the area? Well, there was nowhere to go. This storm was so vast. Right. It covered like most of the South, and we couldn't go north in Texas because then we would have run into snow. We could have gone a little bit farther south, but we personally didn't need to because we didn't lose power, and we were so fortunate and so thankful that we did not lose power. We don't know why this campground didn't. There was a little water problem in another part of the campground, but we kept power and water the whole time. But that being said, we still screwed up. We were not prepared for this. We did mention earlier about doing the grocery shopping. When I did get to the grocery store, it was a couple of days after the storm was kind of ended. I went to the grocery store and it was completely wiped out. There was not a single thing on the meat shelf, cheeses, milk, butter, eggs, all of the necessities, bread. It was all completely gone. So that was panic buying, and I get it because I got sort of sucked into that when I went to the store, because I was like, oh my God, there's no food. What are we doing here? We don't have any food. Right. So it's scary. Try not to panic buy if it happens, but just be prepared. Get those groceries. Get the groceries that you need for a week or two, and you'll eat through them. It's okay.
So hopefully this video was helpful. And if you have any tips yourself, please leave them in the comment section below.
Please consider subscribing to our channel. We'd really appreciate it. And give us a thumbs up. Ring the little notification bell, and then you'll know when we release new content. And we'll see you down the road.
Ciao.